Your Honor, my ex-wife is financially unstable, my ex-husband Kevin declared, standing at the plaintiff's table in his $3,000 suit. She can barely afford groceries. I should have full custody of our children. What Kevin didn't know, what he'd never bothered to discover in our 15-year marriage, was that I had been anonymously funding his entire lifestyle for the past 4 years, including the child support payments he claimed to make. The courtroom was cold, the kind of institutional cold that seeps into your bones. Judge Patricia Morrison sat behind her elevated bench, glasses perched on her nose, reviewing documents. My 12-year-old daughter Lily and 9-year-old son Connor were in the hallway with a court-appointed supervisor, but I knew they were pressed against the door listening. Children always listen when adults think they can't hear. Kevin continued his performance. I've built a successful consulting business. I have a stable home, a good income, and the resources to give our children the life they deserve. Victoria lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. She drives a car that's 12 years old. She works from home doing. He waved his hand dismissively. Something with computers, he concluded. Something with computers was a software platform I developed that processed $47 million in transactions annually. But Kevin had never asked what I did. He'd never cared. During our marriage, he dismissed my work as a hobby while I built an empire in the hours between midnight and 4 a.m. My lawyer, Sandra Akono, placed a hand on my arm. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded. "Your Honor," Sandra stood. "We'd like to submit evidence regarding the financial claims made by Mr. Donovan." "Proceed," Judge Morrison said. Sandra handed a thick folder to the bailiff. "This is a comprehensive financial analysis of both parties. We believe Mr. Donovan has misrepresented several material facts to this court." Kevin's lawyer, a slick man named Harrison Webb, leaned over to whisper to his client. Kevin shook his head confidently. He thought he knew everything. He always had. Judge Morrison opened the folder. Her eyebrows rose, then rose further. "Mr. Webb, has your client disclosed all sources of income to this court?" "Of course, Your Honor. Mr. Donovan has been completely transparent." "Then perhaps he can explain these records from First National Bank." She held up a document. Monthly deposits of $8,500 from an entity called Cascade Holdings transferred directly into Mr. Donovan's account for the past 47 months. Kevin's composure flickered. That's my consulting income. Client payments. Your consulting business is registered as Donovan Advisory Group, Sandra said. Cascade Holdings is a separate entity entirely, one that Mr. Donovan has no ownership stake in. Who owns Cascade Holdings? Judge Morrison asked. Sandra smiled. My client does. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Kevin turned to look at me. Really? Look at me. Maybe for the first time since our divorce. That's not possible. Kevin's voice faltered. I'm afraid it is, Sandra continued. Ms. Hartley has been making monthly payments to Mr. Donovan totaling $8,500. $1,400 designated as child support, $4,500 as spousal support. These payments have continued for nearly 4 years since Mr. Donovan's consulting business failed 8 months after their divorce. That's a lie, Kevin's voice cracked. My business is thriving. I have clients. Your last legitimate client terminated their contract in March of 2021, Sandra said. Since then, your only consistent income has come from my client. Additionally, the child support payments that Mr. Donovan claims to make to Ms. Hartley, those funds originate from Ms. Hartley herself. She pays him and he returns a portion to her checking account to create the appearance of compliance. Judge Morrison removed her glasses and rubbed her temples. Let me understand this correctly. Ms. Hartley has been financially supporting her ex-husband while he takes credit for supporting their children. Correct, Your Honor. Why? Sandra looked at me. This was my moment. Because my children needed to believe their father was capable, I said, standing. When Kevin's business failed, he came to me desperate. He said he'd lose everything, his apartment, his car, his dignity. He said the kids would be ashamed of him. So I offered to help, quietly. You gave him money? I set up monthly transfers through a holding company, enough to cover his rent, his car payment, and create the illusion of success. In exchange, he agreed to maintain regular visitation with our children and never seek full custody. An agreement he's now violated. Judge Morrison observed. Yes, Your Honor. Kevin's face had gone from confident to pale to something approaching purple. You're lying. You're making this up to destroy me. Sandra handed another document to the bailiff. Bank records don't lie, Mr. Donovan. Every transfer is documented. Every deposit is time-stamped. Your signature is on the original agreement. Judge Morrison reviewed the new documents. Mr. Donovan, you signed a contract agreeing to these terms. I didn't think it was legally binding. She's not even a lawyer. The contract was prepared by my firm, Sandra said. Miss Hartley retained us 4 years ago specifically for this eventuality. You planned this. Kevin stared at me for 4 years. You planned to humiliate me. I planned to protect my children. There's a difference, I said. Judge Morrison held up her hand. I'm going to call a 30-minute recess. When we return, I expect complete financial disclosure from both parties. Mr. Donovan, I strongly suggest you reconsider your petition. The bailiff called recess. Kevin's lawyer was already whispering urgently in his ear. I walked into the hallway. Lily and Connor were sitting on a bench, their faces mirrors of confusion and concern. The supervisor stood nearby, pretending not to have heard everything. Mom. Lily's voice was small. What's happening? I sat down between them, pulling them both close. Something complicated, sweetheart. But it's going to be okay. Dad said, you can't take care of us, Connor said. Is that true? I considered. What do you think? He thought for a moment. You make us breakfast every day. You help with homework. You came to every single one of my games last year, even the one in the rain. That's right, I said. Dad missed most of them. He's busy with work. Lily snorted. Mom, we're not stupid. We know Dad doesn't really work. I pulled back, surprised. What do you mean? We visit him every other weekend. He watches TV all day. He orders takeout because he says he's too tired to cook. He complains about money constantly, but he has a nice car and a big apartment. She paused. We figured something was weird. Why didn't you say anything? Because you never said anything bad about him, so we thought maybe we were wrong. She looked at me with her father's blue eyes but my mother's wisdom. We weren't wrong, were we? No, baby. You weren't wrong. Connor leaned into me. Does this mean we don't have to visit him anymore? That's up to the judge and partly up to you. How do you feel about seeing your father? They exchanged a look, the silent communication of siblings who'd weathered storms together. He's our dad, Lily said finally. We love him, but we don't want to live with him. We want to stay with you. That's what I want too, I said. The recess ended. We returned to the courtroom. Kevin was still at the plaintiff's table, but his posture had changed. Shoulders slumped. Confidence evaporated. Mr. Donovan, Judge Morrison began, do you wish to proceed with your custody petition? His lawyer whispered something. Kevin shook his head. Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw the petition for full custody. I thought he might, I muttered quietly. Judge Morrison turned to me. Ms. Hartley, you have legitimate grounds for a counter-petition. Given Mr. Donovan's fraudulent representations to this court, I would likely rule in your favor for full custody with limited visitation. I felt the weight of the moment, the chance to destroy Kevin completely, to take everything from him the way he tried to take everything from me. My children were watching from the back of the courtroom, now allowed in for the conclusion. They were watching to see what kind of person their mother was. Your Honor, I don't want to limit my children's relationship with their father. He made mistakes today, but he's still their dad. They need him in their lives. Kevin's head snapped up. I propose we maintain the current custody arrangement. Primary residence with me, visitation every other weekend with Mr. Donovan. However, I request that the court mandate family counseling for all parties, and that Mr. Donovan participate in a co-parenting course. And the financial support. I'm willing to continue supplementing Mr. Donovan's income at a reduced rate, enough to maintain stable housing for when the children visit. But I want it documented officially this time. No more secrets. Judge Morrison looked at Kevin. Mr. Donovan, do you have any response? For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, why would you do this? After what I tried to do today? I replied, because our children are watching. Because they're going to remember this day for the rest of their lives. I want them to remember that their mother chose compassion over revenge, even when revenge was justified. The courtroom was silent. Ms. Hartley, Judge Morrison said, in 23 years on the bench I've rarely seen such grace under pressure. Your proposal is reasonable and child-focused. I'm granting your requests. He turned to Kevin. Mr. Donovan, you came into my courtroom today with lies and manipulation. You attempted to use false financial claims to separate children from a loving, capable mother. If Miss Hartley had pressed for it, I would have severely restricted your parental rights. Instead, she's offering you a second chance. I suggest you take it. I don't understand, Kevin said almost to himself. How did you build all this without me knowing? You never asked, I replied. In 15 years of marriage, you never once asked about my work. You assumed I was less than you. You were wrong. Court adjourned. Kevin left through a side door, unable to face me or the children. His lawyer followed, already distancing himself from a client who had become a liability. Lily and Connor ran to me in the hallway. We held each other for a long time. Mom, Connor asked, are you really rich? I'm comfortable. More importantly, we're secure. No matter what happens, we'll be okay. Why did you help Dad all this time? He's so mean to you because he's your father. Because I hoped he'd use the stability to become a better person. Because I didn't want you to see him fail, but he was going to take us away from you. He was scared. Scared people do desperate things. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. Sandra joined us, smiling. That was masterfully handled. You could have destroyed him. Destruction was never the goal. I just wanted to keep my family together. You did more than that. Your kids just watched their mother demonstrate integrity under fire. That's a lesson worth more than any courtroom victory. 6 months later, things had settled into a new normal. Kevin attended co-parenting classes. He started therapy. He even got a real job, entry-level marketing at a firm downtown. Not glamorous but honest work. The children visited him every other weekend. The visits were calmer now. Kevin was trying, genuinely trying, to be present instead of performing. One Sunday evening he dropped them off and asked to speak with me privately. I owe you more than an apology, he said. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I do. I spent our entire marriage feeling inferior to you. You were smarter, more capable, more everything. I dealt with that by dismissing your work, making you feel small. It was pathetic. When my business failed, I couldn't admit it. I couldn't let anyone see that the man who'd spent 15 years claiming superiority had completely fallen apart. Your offer felt like a lifeline, but it also felt like proof that you'd always been better than me. It wasn't about being better. It was about being family. I know that now. He paused. The kids talk about you differently, with so much pride. They know what you built. They know who you really are. They know who you really are too. The question is whether you'll be someone they can respect. I'm trying. Then keep trying. That's all any of us can do. He left. The kids were inside doing homework at the kitchen table. Our modest apartment, the one Kevin had mocked in court. Our 12-year-old car in the parking lot. Our simple life that held more wealth than he'd ever understood. Mom, Lily looked up from her math. I want to start a business someday. Like you. What kind of business? I don't know yet, but I want to build something. Something that's mine. Then you will. I'll teach you everything I know. Will you teach me how to be brave too? Like you were in court. I sat down across from her, taking her hands in mine. Bravery isn't about not being scared, sweetheart. It's about doing the right thing, even when you're terrified, even when it would be easier to be cruel. You could have been cruel to Dad. I could have, but cruelty doesn't build anything. It only destroys. And I'd rather build. She smiled, my smile on her young face. Me too, Mom. Me too. Outside, the sun was setting over our ordinary neighborhood in our ordinary town. But inside this apartment lived a woman who'd built an empire in secret, children who'd learned that strength looks like compassion, and a future that was entirely our own. Kevin had told a judge I couldn't support my kids. He was wrong about a lot of things.